Diksha, for being part of this success story series. So before we get started, if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself, what do you do and what is your background?
Definitely. So I'm Diksha Pandey. I'm based out of Hyderabad. I work in Oppo R&D Center as an assistant project manager. I graduated in 2016 from BCom Computers. So it is fairly a long journey. I started working in 2018 owing to some medical problems, issues, pretty much big ones. So I met with this major accident and I had a brain injury. Then I had to rest for about 2 years nearly. So, but yeah, in between I never stopped. I was still working and I was doing internships, researching. So I never stopped. So that's one good thing. Till the time when I could start working is when I started working, and then I started working back in January 2018 with a startup. It was into market research. The startup did not fare well, and I was there only for 4 months. But then I joined Deloitte after that. I joined Deloitte as a marketing assistant. Marketing coordinator is the term we used there. Then I worked there for 1.5 years, and then I moved to Oppo R&D Center as a project assistant, and then I became the assistant project manager. So this is about my career. So in this entire thing, I realized that there's a lot more I want to do, a lot more I want to achieve. MBA has always been on my list, but there's this one school that I love, that's ISB. So I always I aspired to be there. So I knew that I would be taking GMAT. I thought I would be taking GMAT at a later stage, but once COVID hit, and I saw that how uncertain the market is, and we all started working from home, and there was a new norm. This work from home became a new norm. It was general. So that's when I think this is the best time to get started. 2020 was fairly of ups and downs. I could not start, but 2021 January marked the beginning of my preparation for GMAT. I was very, very dedicated. And, because of COVID, there were no promotions, and hikes were also, kind of on the very lower side. Rather, I did not even get it for the year 2020. So that pushed my motivation even more, that okay, this is the time that I need to get it done. And my work schedule was very, very hectic because I come from this phone industry. We are launching phones, we are working on new phones day in and day out. But that's what comes into the picture. You need to prioritize your priorities, and you need to know what you want to do. So that's when I knew that it was more like fish eye, like just looking at one thing, rather than the bird's eye view profile. This I knew that my profile is on mark. I have already done how much I could, and there's this last 1 year won't make a significant change, but what I can change is the GMAT score, and 1 year is more than enough good time. And then
I have a question here. So your main motivation for thinking for an MBA was one that you wanted to, look at the next step more from your career perspective. And second is COVID also gave you some time to think through what you wanted to do. Is that how it was?
Exactly, that's how it was. I started penning down all the thoughts and what I wanted to do. Before this, I'm very happy in project management, but that's when I started to discover that I'm more onto the product management side and the strategy side. And that's how I started aligning my work as well. Along with my current work, I used to take up some projects in the initial stage wherein I could actually work on my skill set that was towards the product management. And when I started doing that, I realized that I love product management and strategy side more than what I'm currently doing. That's how it went.
So, when you actually start thinking about GMAT, right, there are so many background processes that happen in terms of research, right? So what did you do, and how did you go about researching on how you should get started with your preparation?
So the first thing, I know it was a very wrong thing on my side, but the first thing I had in my mind was, okay, so GMAT, let's keep just 700 as a target, because 720, 30 is for very brilliant people. I am average kid. Let's focus on what I can do, is how I started, was the mindset that I started with. I researched a lot. I came across various websites. One of them was Crack Verbal. Other one was EasyMat, and few more, a lot of them, in fact. I was very active on GMAT Club. I'm still active on GMAT Club for that matter, but I was very active. I used to see. So the first thing I started doing was started preparing the questions from GMAT Club, just to see where do I stand. And then I realized that, it's been very long that I've been working and all. There are a lot of work that needs to go around in the background. So I knew Likeshwaran from Crack Verbal. I remember when I was in the CAT phase, he actually pitched me about GMAT and I just brushed it off because, oh man, that is for brilliant kids. Where's my profile? What will I do? But now when I was standing here, I just remembered him. He's been very supportive. I reached out to him. I signed up with Crack Verbal. So that's how it started. I started with Crack Verbal's basic sessions, the ones pre-recorded basic videos. I must say that's the best thing about it, because I am more of a self prep and self starter. I cannot sit and attend classes and then get onto the flow, but I love to study on my own, have doubts, and then look at the videos and then do it again on myself. So that's how I started. So that's how me and Crack Verbal, we started together. It was amazing. They've always been there. I so loved those pre-recorded videos. There was enough to just turn on that one switch which was been off since for a very long time. So that was one thing that I used.
So Diksha, you said that you spent some time doing some prep yourself also, like you were preparing on GMAT Club and solving questions from GMAT Club. What was your change in perspective after you went through the course?
I was solving it in the lengthiest, methods. Probably if I was doing that in the original GMAT and during my exam, I would have not got anything more than 550 because of the time constraint. You see, I always tell people that the questions are not very tough. If you've been good with your basics, and if you you've done some sort of a preparation in past, maybe CAT or something like that, because I was a CAT aspirant myself, you'll be able to solve the questions. But the problem is the way you solve it. You'll not optimize the time, and you'll never reach up to that 700 level of questions because you might go wrong and you don't know the right way to solve it, because GMAT requires you not to touch your pen and paper very often, because if you're doing that, you miss out on time. You need to be very, very diligent about the time, because I think GMAT also tests your managerial skills during the exam. There's this one thing I have noticed. You might be doing the toughest question right, but the next question will be very easy. And that I used to lose, when I was writing my mocks, I used to lose all my confidence there. I used to get all, burnt up. Oh my God, I did the last question wrong. And in turn, I used to do this easy question wrong. And when I used to check my analysis, that was there. So that's how so I'll talk about it in the later part of this. But yes, when I took up the course, I knew the right way to do things and the easiest way to do things. I didn't know there was something like back solving that existed, and substituting was like, when we were in school, we were taught that this is the wrong way, you'll not get marks for it, so we never incorporated it. But here I think that's the best way to go about it if you really want to ace it.
Right. So what was your major pain point? Was verbal your pain point, or was quant your pain point?
Quant. Okay. I was, typical that student who hated quants. I, in fact, hated quants, loathed quants. I can use all the synonyms right here. And I thought that even if I score a 45 in quant, I would be, on the cloud 9. And I don't think I can get more than that. But I think quant is a section that you can trust. Verbal is the section you cannot trust. I actually was very good at verbal. In all my mock tests, I used to get around 45, 46. In my real exam, I only got 42. So
amazing, huh?
No, but still, it's still a shift. And but quant was what I used to get around 49, 50, and even in the main exam, I got 50. So that's when I know that, okay, quant, if you are practicing very diligently, you can trust this section, but verbal is something that you should not place your trust and work very hard for it. Similarly.
Right. So what was your prep strategy like? How, like every day along with work, you mentioned your work was very hectic. Mm-hmm. How did you manage your whole preparation strategy?
So the first thing I did was to get into the mindset of a student than being a working professional. I pushed back. I stopped doing the overtime work and the weekend work. I was very, very strong, and I started telling a no in the office. I knew it would have repercussions, but then I was not bothered about it. I just knew that there's the score I'm targeting. My actual target was 720 to 730, and over the time it's only increased. So, but initially when I started, it was 700. Then because of my mocks and all, it became 720, 730. And even in my last mock, I got a 730, but in my exam, I got a 750. So that was like a, it was great. I was very happy. But I think it happened because of this consistency over the time. So I started my preparation back in January, but January and February was something I did, self prep, which was definitely not exactly up to the mark. But in March, I took up Crack Verbal. I started looking at the pre-recorded videos, and then I started doing the sums myself. In between, there was a gap for a month because I was hit. I was COVID positive, and it was pretty severe. But what I did in that time was I used to read a lot of books. So I read two books at that time. One was Blue Ocean Strategy, which is totally about the strategy, and the second one was The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up. So I read that because I just thought this is something just to lighten up, and the Blue Ocean Strategy because that was there in my library for some time, and I was not getting time to read it. But I read because I knew that this is going to help me with GMAT. So I started reading. I am not exactly a newspaper fan. I'm trying to inculcate the habit even now, but it's not happening. But I read a lot, the books, and I read a lot of articles, blogs. I write blogs myself. So I was doing that. So and then when my full-fledged preparation started back in April and May, I touched points on my basics. I made sure that by June I should be very, very good with my basics. I don't have to come back. And when I say basics, I don't mean see your formula and just get away. I mean to say see the formula, do the questions, and see where did you go wrong, and then practice. Don't look at the time you're taking, don't look at the accuracy, don't get into the GMAT fields, get into that school going fields, till 10th. And for people who think, I'm commerce, you're science, let me be very clear, 10th tak to tumne bhi padha hai. Everyone studied till 10th class, and that's exactly what you see in your question paper. I don't think, yeah, there are different questions, not what you've solved in your class 10, but the basics remain the same. So you don't have to be like, engineering background, arts background. There's no background. There's just one thing that you need to, okay, maybe engineering guy needs 1 month for his basics preparation. You need two, but devote two. So that was there. So I started doing my basics. Initially, it was very tough. I used to study probably for 2-3 days in a week on my working days, and on my weekends, probably an hour each, Saturday, Sunday, which is very, very less if you really have to target a great score. But that's how it started. So by my second month, I was doing 2 hours per day on my working days, and 3 to 4 hours on my weekends. So that was a pretty good catch. And once I was in June, the best thing that I would like to suggest is take your date as soon as possible. Pick it. I know online GMAT gives 24. You can schedule your exam 24 hours, prior to your requirement. But I suggest not doing that because you'll never get serious. You'll never get into that mindset. So I chose my date back in June. Like on June 1, I decided that I would be writing it on October 4. And why did I choose that Monday? Because I don't know, I felt that on weekends, somehow IT professionals, our minds don't work. We are in that leisure zone. So I would rather use it. And I had applied for a leave back in June that I'll be busy. And in fact, I applied for a leave 1 week prior to my exam. So I was on a leave from Monday to Monday, and Monday was my exam. So at that level of planning you need to have, that these 3 months are like these four, like whatever 3-4 months. How am I going to utilize? I chose October because I was sure I want to apply in R2. I should have applied in R1, but that's what I thought at that point of time, that I need this much preparation for this target score. So is what I planned. So in June, I started very diligently. By this time, my basics were on point. I gave my first mock then. It was not very great. I got a 560 in my first mock. And then I realized, okay, basics are good, and now I need to really step up. So 1 month, June, I started doing questions from my OG. OG is your Bible. Do it, complete it. And if you're solving any question wrong, see where did you go wrong. And if you're solving a question right, look at all the answer options explanation as to why is it wrong. because otherwise you'll not get into the logic of the exam. So I have not solved a lot of books. I used only Manhattan Preps, quite a few materials from there, and my official guide. And that's about it. I never did a lot of here and there. I was not running behind internet for a lot of books. I knew that whatever I have is what I need to complete in the best way possible. So there was a lot of analysis in the first 2 months, June, July, how, as to when. I remember July end, I took one more mock test, and that time I got a 680. So that was like a drastic jump from 5. And since then, I had been very constant. I used to give initially I used to give my mock test at every alternate weekend. So monthly twice I used to give it. The scores remained very constant. I was between 650 to 680, and I knew that I targeted 720, 730. So going forward, from August, September, these 2 months were like the very, very crucial months. I used to prepare, like on my working days, very busy working days, I used to prepare for around 6 hours. How? Morning 3 hours. um, in afternoon, when we had lunch hour, I used to solve a few RCs, and I used to complete my work fast. We are not traveling, so anyone, if you're working from home, please remember, you're not traveling, you're not out with your colleagues for your lunch. You still have all that time. And the most important part would be, in your last 3 months, stop talking to people who are not from GMAT. That's very important. See, of course you cannot avoid business communication, but your friends will always understand if you push back on plans, or if you don't want to get into all the type of conversations of switching the jobs or whatever concerns your personal life. The only conversation that you should be having at this point of time is probably GMAT club ke questions, is what I believe in. And you need to be very, very focused, right in your mind, right in your work, right in your the way you are looking at yourself. Like if you get some time off your work, and not all the days are busy, some days you might have it as like, but non-busy day. It's okay. Switch off your laptop earlier, probably have a cup of coffee, and get started with your preparation. Do not Netflix, do not Prime. People say remove all the social media. No, don't, because you might actually connect with someone who is studying. But remove this Netflix, Prime. I have not watched Squid Games, and I have not watched all the series that have come in between. I'm not even aware what that is. So if you really want to be in this GMAT zone, I would rather suggest deactivate your Prime, Netflix, and all the these kind of OTT platforms which distract you. They are good sometimes for refreshment, but you can use YouTube for that. You can look at the interviews of the people who have made it to the college, because it's you can take this period as a sprint. It's not forever. You're not going to take down your OTT platform forever. It's just a while. It's just a milestone. So for those 3 months we can. So yeah, I did that. I was not active anywhere. I was only talking to people who are into GMAT. I was either taking help or giving help. I was not doing anything in between. And mock test in the last 2 months should be every weekend, and analyze it really well. Till the last mock test, always realize. See, one more thing, very honestly, you'll not know all the questions. You'll have to make known, calculated guesses. So whatever you're doing in your mock test, please make a note, see what worked and what did not, because you will make calculated guesses even in your examination. You'll not know all the questions. And once you're in the last few mocks of yours, you'll know that how accurate your known guesses are. So for me, that was also working very well, because if there was something that I was not very sure of, I knew how to process it. At least you'll realize how to process the wrong options,
Right.
because of the practice. So this was about it. And I must just add that consistency and dedication is what gets you there. You need to be very, very consistent. If you're going for a party, maybe on a Friday night, don't get drunk. You need to know that on a Saturday you need to study the entire day, so don't do that. Be very, very calculative about it. Or if you have plans on a Saturday night, wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and start preparing, so that you're done for that 4 5 hours, whatever you have to dedicate. Don't study for 12 hours. Nothing is going to get into your mind. The maximum you can study in one day is for 6 hours. I've tried it. I've tried studying for 7 8 hours, but it's not theory that you can just grasp and leave. So you need to practice. Beyond 6 hours, your mental abilities will not really take it. And so yeah, 6 hours per day should be a good time.
Awesome, awesome. In fact, everything that you said is gold. I'm definitely sure that people are going to make use of this. I have some certain specific questions around your test taking strategy, right? So you mentioned the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, you pretty much took every week you took the test. What was your strategy while you took the test and analyzed the test? So did you also analyze the ones that you did right, the ones you did wrong? How did you go about that aspect?
So I took the test from Manhattan Prep and official ones, both. So official ones, I kept it for more or less ending because they're very, they are very true to your scoring, but those questions are fairly easier when it comes to the main exam. But on the other hand, Manhattan Prep is very, very tough. So if you're getting a 710, 700 in Manhattan Prep, you get a 750 in your main score. That's how it works because that's pretty tough. So I started with Manhattan Prep. So I used to get fairly on the lower side, 680, and it used to dishearten me, but I never took it to my heart. So the most important thing I would do is I would take a test only on a Saturday so that I can analyze it the entire weekend. And how do you go about the analysis is take, one section, take it like, by section. IR and AWA are things that you can always, cover up. If you know quants, you will be doing IR well. I'm very sure of that. And AWA is something that I also, pretty much ignored it, but you should not ignore it. But I think if you're doing your verbal preparation, great, that will be handled as well, because that's more or less, it's like a theoretical question of a CR. Take it that way and you'll be doing it well. So about the strategy, let's start with verbal. So in verbal, of course, there's RC, there is sentence correction, and there's critical reasoning. What I figured out is RC is again something that you cannot predict, but your CR and sentence correction is something that you need to work on your accuracy. And the questions get tough in this only. RC is anyways unpredictable. You cannot predict it, but you can predict what will happen in CR. What are the kind of tough questions? Mostly what I observed was conclusion-based questions were fairly on the tougher side, because we all we try assuming things. So do not assume anything. Whatever is there in that one small paragraph it is. So don't assume beyond, things like that. So I started I used to start with I used to always start with critical reasoning. I used to also go about the wrong, options. As in, why are they wrong? What's wrong in that to be wrong? So I used to read it. I used to make proper notes. My entire preparation was on laptop only. I never used a pen and paper because I didn't want to get used to this kind of a preparation. So always make notes on probably Word. You can use Word document. That comes very handy. And you can also help someone in the future if they need it. So I have all my Word documents and, everything saved. And it can help you also if you want to take up a second attempt. Maybe I was prepared mentally to take up a second attempt as well. Even after 750, I was thinking, should I write it one more time? I might get a 770 or 780. But then I thought, okay, I should probably focus on something else right now, maybe in the future if need be. But so on, you should always have it in your mind that these notes, you might require it someday. You should always think, of course, you should think that your first attempt is your last attempt. But then, you need to have a side plan B. Coming from the project management side, we always, risk mitigation and plan B is something I cannot avoid. But yes, so coming to the verbal section, you need to see that sentence correction, where exactly, like what are the kind of grammar rules are they using on the sentence, which the options which are wrong. What's the grammar that's going, wrong there, so that you start identifying what's wrong. With RC, it's all about the speed and accuracy again, how fast you can read and how fast you can interpret. I've also seen that in a few RC questions, there is CR, intermixed. So there is some element of critical reasoning in that RC. So you need to be very aware that you've read these kind of questions and, you try solving it. So this was exactly what I did for verbal. I was I used to look at every question, every answer. And I used to take one mock twice. Probably if I've taken one mock problem in the first weekend of a month, I'll take it again in the last weekend of the month, because you do not have, unlimited mock tests. And even in your main official mock test, you can, clear the entire thing and take it once again. So that was my strategy. So I used those two tests twice. And you might think, no, question will repeat. No, you'll not remember the questions, trust me. You'll only remember the logic, and you'll start getting into the fields of how do you think in the paper. So I did that for verbal. For coming to quants, data sufficiency and word problems, two sections. Data sufficiency is what you should be working on primarily in the first go, because again, that's a very manageable set, because they don't expect you to touch your pen and paper a lot. That's not very calculation intensive. That's very thought provoking. So if you start making sure that your accuracy and your speed both should be apt with data sufficiency, you can ace probably around 48, 49 there in the quants, because you get all the questions right in data sufficiency, and your word problems you'll anyway manage because you've been practicing it. What you're not practicing is data sufficiency. So I started working on those lines. Again, for data sufficiency, why is the option wrong? Why is the option correct? Always make a note of all the wrong ones also, as to why was something wrong, what are the kind of tricks they are using in your options. And trust me, more or less the same things will be there in your question also. And during my exam, I remember there were 2-3 questions I felt like I have solved it earlier. They were exactly the same questions with different numbers and people, but the logic is what you need to remember. Is, as I mentioned, I remember very clearly that I solved those 2-3 questions from maybe OG or one of my mock tests. So that you'll start relating it this way, that I have done this. And human psychology, whenever you find something familiar, you tend to do well. So make sure that before you step into the exam, you're very familiar with the paper. It's like your environment, everything should be very familiar, and you tend to do better, is what I realized. So this was my test taking strategy. Also in the mock test, I would like to add one more thing. You're taking it on a weekly basis. So make sure that you don't keep the analysis for, if you take it on a Saturday, let's assume, don't keep your analysis for Wednesday. You'll be forgetting things that you did wrong or you thought wrong during your exam. You need to analyze why did you think wrong, and solve that question again and see if you're still thinking the same way after seeing the solution, or has it changed. And then start finding similar question of that sort. How can you find a similar question? Just note down the question, type it on Google. You'll find 50 or less more, 50 or more rather, similar questions on GMAT Club. And that's how you can use your internet. I mean, internet is very, very useful when it comes to preparation. Or if you still have a doubt, go back to, if you're taking classes. So I used to do this. I used to sometimes attend a live session where I used to, hope that this kind of a question might be discussed, or I used to watch a recording where the basic was discussed to get myself back on track. So this was my, mock test strategy.
So for someone who's so worried about quant, what was the split you ended up with?
I started loving quants. I started taking it as a riddle or a puzzle, because I realized it's not that math you did in school where you don't realize what's happening. Now it was very logical. The questions were like, you come across this day in and day out in whatever work profile you are in. Questions like, one of the questions I remember was very funny. In a class, there are so and so many kids. So many kids have studied this. In your resource management or allocation, you always do this day in and day out. You never realized you were doing quants, and you love it. But when it comes to quant, so people who are scared of quant, you're just scared of that word quant. You're not scared of maths because you're doing it day in and day out. You're calculating. Yeah, so this is very important. Mental math. Start preparing all those fractions, percentages. Like if I ask you, these calculations like 7733 is the difference, should be on your fingertip. It should just be there. You don't have to sit and think, okay, you should not be calculating. So mental math is very, very important. If you're like, you calculate it in day out, I am very sure people are using their credit cards. You have 1.5% rewards, you have 4% rewards. If you're calculating that without your calculator, you're already on the way to get good score in GMAT. So start doing that. Start applying calculations in your regular life, like maybe on your credit card. Reward points, how many reward points, percentages. If you see a discount, maybe Myntra 34% discount, you should be able to calculate it in your mind right there. And then you'll at times also see that there are many wrong calculations. So you'll feel happy about it. that, hey, okay, I did this. So similarly, you can just start practicing. With respect to vocab, I did not have a problem with vocabulary because I'm an avid reader. But if you have a problem with that, you can make this a game as well. Start reading new words. There is a set of, GMAT question, the GMAT vocab list. There is one thing you can find it on internet. So start reading it, make it a game. And even for the entire verbal section, don't look at it like verbal, because these are life skills. Verbal is not your exam skills. You'll need CR going forward for your, if you aspire to be a consultant, sentence correction, so that you can write, effective emails. And reading comprehensions, because you have to read 100 of reports every day if you want to go for your career after MBA. So just start taking things as a life skill rather than something that you're just doing for examination. So that's how I got it in my mindset. And regarding quants, I also realized that you're doing Excel day in and day out, you're doing Tableau, you're doing Power BI, and then you're scared of mathematics. I don't think that's actually happening. So just start doing the questions like a puzzle, like probably a riddle. And then you get into the hang of it, and probably you'll start loving quants more than what you love verbal. That would be my suggestion.
That's true. And did you take the online version or did you take the offline?
I took the online version because I had scheduled it back in June, where the situation was very grim. So I had scheduled it long ago. But I don't think there is any difference when it comes to, online version, or either you save a lot of hassle of traveling. So my good thing was, you see me here, I wrote the exam right here, right on my study table. Of course, I had to clear up a lot of things, but yeah, it was a very good experience. I read a lot of, technical issues and all. I kept my laptop prepared for like, maybe 1 week. I used to check my laptop every day. This was not the laptop I used my personal laptop. We know that as an IT professional, we never switch on our personal laptops, but I started switching it on. I used to check every day what are the window updates that I miss on, or I should not be missing on. I switched off all the notifications. I uninstalled all the games. I am a gamer, so I played a lot of games. So of course came a lot of malware. So I uninstalled everything and I kept my laptop ready. I did not have any technical issue during the exam, except for one wherein during AWA, my laptop, the screen went off, but I was connected to the proctor. She was very helpful. She took the control of my laptop. She entered few passwords and it was back there. My essay was not there, but the time was still there. So it was just two sentences that I had written. I could write it again. It was pretty in a jiffy because I was already in the hang of it. So yeah, it was very good actually. I think like we are evolving in terms of, so if we can work from home, why not write exams from home? Why not do everything from home, whatever you can? So it was pretty good experience.
Right. And, how did you feel when you saw the score finally a 750?
I was very disappointed because my eyes straight away went on to that verbal, which was 42. I was very disappointed. I did not see my total till then. I was, oh my God. Then I saw my quants and I was like, okay. And then I saw my total and I was like, I was very happy, but you're not allowed to move. So the exam. So regarding the online thing. So if you are taking up an online exam, make sure you get the hang of the whiteboard and the slate, because I used a physical whiteboard. It was allowed for my attempt. So it was allowed for like 2-3 months prior to that only. So I used it. I used it for a month for my practice. I was very used to it. So proctors generally, they are very friendly. They want you to place it in a way that you and the whiteboard are in their vision. And unless you are doing something wrong, you don't have to be worried about it. So I was like it was very comfortable. I used to solve one question. I used to keep marking. It was very easy. So that was about the whiteboard. I think whiteboard is the best thing that could happen to online GMAT. Without it, it's very difficult. So that was one thing. So yeah, when I saw 750, I was reconsidering right there in the seat, should I write it again? What happened? Where did I go wrong with verbal? But then it's okay. I thought, okay, this is good. I was very happy. After that, I was probably in trance for 2 days. I could not believe it. I was very, very confused. And then in 4 or 5 days, I had my official score coming in and I was very, very happy. I was elated. So yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. That's an amazing story. And I think I tell this to everyone who scores very high. I can feel that they enjoyed the process, right? So it might be taxing, it might be a lot of compromises and a lot of sacrificing happens to your personal as well as professional life. But looks like you enjoyed the process too. And obviously it gave you great returns. So that's awesome.
Yes, so I've learned so many things. So you should always look at it not like an exam, but a learning for your future as well. How many things have you learned? You've actually learned stress management, because I remember 2 days before my exam, the Saturday before the Monday I wrote, I was, I was overdosing on coffee. I was so anxious. I didn't know what do I do, but then I was very, I was trying to keep myself calm. So it does not matter where are you writing, but please be very confident and sure in your mind the exam pattern you want to take. Because if you're going online, you need to take care of your logistics. You need to take care where the center is. You need to know it. The last moment anxiety. If you're writing it from home, make sure that your room is pretty clear. You don't want to give any, you'll be recorded entire time. So be sure that you are under, fair lighting. That's about it, and you don't have to worry about what if my power goes off. I had made amends for that. I fixed up because we are working from home, we anyways have power backups, thanks to the work from home culture that we have got into. So that was all good. You need to just be confident, work very hard, and on the day of exam, when you're logging in, so if it is at 9 for an example, log in at 8, check your computer again, and remind yourself of all the hard work you've put in and all the OTT series that you've missed, and how you'll be catching up with it once after you're done with your exam, and how you'll be sleeping peacefully for. So after my exam, it felt like there was a huge load off my chest. And then I've started going to the office, and people look at you differently. Now you've suddenly become smarter person on the floor. Before this, you were just there. You were doing your work. You were meeting the expectations. You were a good employee. But now suddenly you are one of those employees whom they're looking at. Okay, so you can work this hard. You can study along with your work. And yes, it takes dedication on a different level when you're studying and you're working at the same time, because you cannot leave your work entirely. You have to give it some time or some mental space, but don't let that get onto your mind. GMAT should be on your mind at least for the 3 months. Don't think of anything else in your life. Just remember that one college you want to make it to. We can think of the profile and all later, but first for these 3 months, see, because when you had to think for the profile, you were thinking of GMAT. So right thing at the right time is very important. Right now you should be thinking about your score, so do not think about the profile. Don't think about that NGO experience that could help on your profile. You can do it later. If you've not done it all this while, doing it now will anyways not give you anything. But doing, working hard for your GMAT might actually give you a 10-20 point higher, and you might not need an NGO on your I've seen a lot of posts on GMAT Club. In the last moment, they're like, anyone working with NGO, can I get a certificate? It's all irrelevant. Just focus on that one exam that you have, and later everything will fall in place. So this was my overall experience with GMAT. I love talking about it because it's been a journey so far. I enjoyed it thoroughly, as you said. I really appreciate Crack Verbal in all of these times, because like I used to just ask for support and I've got it. I don't think it was possible without Crack Verbal. I may have used a lot of online resources at the same time, but the crux of the preparation that comes from the basics was actually from here, and it was seamless. You just have the chapter and you also get the clarity as to, see, nothing is very important or non-important in GMAT exam because you cannot predict the paper, but you know how to predict one chapter's questions, and that you learn from Crack Verbal. These kind of strategies you learn from Crack Verbal. So I think it's very important to, even if you're a self-prep person like me, take up one thing, sign up for it, and at least look at the basics and the strategies, and you get into that field of it. So yeah, it's been a smooth ride so far.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Diksha. I think this was amazing, and you are so much fun talking to. And normally after the whole success story, I asked for words of wisdom, but everything that you said in this session was words of wisdom, so I don't really need to ask you for it. Anyone who's listening should just go through the interview again and again to know what are the words of wisdom. So I think amazing talking to you, so much fun, and so much of great information and knowledge and your experience. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best for your
Thank you.
of life. I'm sure you'll do awesome. And
Thank you.
I'm so happy for you that you got the score you wanted. And I'm so glad that we were part of your journey also.
Thank you. So I'll sum it up with just two words: dedication and commitment. There is no substitute. You can substitute in your questions, you can back solve it, but here there is no substitution. Here you have to follow commitment and dedication, and you will get the result for sure. Like, definitely, just trust in yourself, but do not forget consistency, commitment, and dedication. Three things, and you're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Diksha. I have to show this interview to Arun too, and I'm sure he'll invite you to some more live session. So that other people also get to know the joy of this journey, right? So thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for giving me time on a Saturday. All the best, and let us know if you need any help.
Definitely. Have a great weekend, you too.
Thank you. Bye, Diksha. Thank you.
Bye-bye.